We're about to dive into one of the most critical and honestly heartbreaking moments in American history, a time when the whole idea of the United States was pushed to the absolute brink. Just think about that for a second. In 1861, America declared war on itself, not on some foreign enemy, but a war of neighbor against neighbor, state against state. The nation literally turned on itself and began to tear itself apart.
So, how on earth did it get to that point? Well, it definitely didn't happen overnight. But the year 1861, that's when all the cracks that had been forming for decades finally shattered. And that's where our story really kicks off, with the fracturing of the Union.
Before a single shot was fired, there was this massive political earthquake. For decades, the country had been arguing over economics, states' rights, and of course, the huge central issue of slavery. Well, a number of southern states finally decided they were done. They were out. They officially declared they were leaving the United States to start their own country. And that was the first real step toward all-out war.
But, just saying you're a separate country is one thing. It's another thing entirely to make it stick. This whole crisis was about to move from fiery speeches in state houses to actual fire on the battlefield.
And what's wild is just how fast everything escalated. I mean, the ink was barely dry on those secession papers before the first shots were fired at Fort Sumter. That was it. That was the point of no return. The political decision to leave the Union now had a military consequence. The war was on.
Okay, so at the very heart of this conflict, you had two completely different, and I mean totally incompatible views of what the United States even was. And these two opposing ideas were perfectly embodied by the two presidents who were about to lead their people through the storm: Abraham Lincoln for the Union and Jefferson Davis for the new Confederacy.
For President Lincoln, the mission was crystal clear. His paramount object, as he put it, wasn't initially to end slavery. It was something he saw as even more fundamental: simply saving the Union. Every single thing he did was going to flow from that one solid goal.
This one word he used, perpetual, it tells you everything you need to know. To Lincoln, the Union wasn't some kind of club that states could just join or leave whenever they felt like it. He believed it was permanent, an unbreakable bond. So in his eyes, secession wasn't just a political disagreement, it was an illegal rebellion against the nation itself.
Now, on the other side, you've got the Confederate President Jefferson Davis, and he framed his position very differently, with this incredibly simple, direct plea: all we ask is to be left alone. Now, on the surface, it sounds like a straightforward request for independence, but that desire to be left alone was completely tied to the Confederacy's main goal: to protect its way of life, with the institution of slavery at its very core.
So when you put them side by side, it's just so stark. For Lincoln, the principle is a perpetual union, and the goal is to save it. For Davis, the principle is the right to secede, and the goal is to be left alone to build a new nation. These aren't just different policies. We're talking about two irreconcilable worlds. There was no middle ground here. One of them had to give way.
And the result of these two clashing ideologies? Well, it was pretty much inevitable. The political break, followed by the first shots of war, led to one undeniable, tragic reality for the American people.
America was divided. It's such a simple statement, but it describes a devastatingly complex reality. That house divided against itself that Abraham Lincoln had warned about years earlier, it wasn't a warning anymore. It had actually happened.
And this really brings us to the final, lingering question. This Civil War would eventually end, and the Union would be preserved. But the scars? Wow, the scars would remain. And it leaves us wondering not just about 1861, but about any time, any place. When a nation gets that deeply fractured, what does it truly take to make it whole again?